the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Planted with Sara Payan podcast. I'm Sara Payan, your host, and today we are in Trinity County. We are at Soul Spirit Farm, where we have Judi Nelson and Walter Wood, and also joining us from Emerald Queen Farms is Riley Morrison. Welcome. Thank you for being here today. I'm so excited. The idea of doing a full series, a full month of craft farmers is something that was not only really exciting for us, but also super important, because for people out there who are purchasing cannabis from dispensaries where everything is pre-packaged, you see this as a consumer packaged good and you don't look at it for what it is. It's agriculture, it's plants, it's life, it's energy. And if we did not have the farmers, we would not have all of these wonderful things for you to enjoy. And as we're getting into the industrialization of cannabis, we have to stop and ask ourselves, where is the soul of this industry going? And who should we be supporting? And the biggest thing is that we should be voting with our wallet. So this month is very purposefully around talking about that and having the conversations and hearing the stories from the people who are actually making this happen for us. So I just really want to welcome you three for being on the show. And before we get into some of the deep discussions, I want to ask you a question that I like to ask all of my guests. What was your first cannabis experience? Who wants to go first? Riley, you want to go first?
Sounds good. I was thinking about this. Maybe I grew up in Atlanta in the early 90s. And so for us, like, to find good weed was pretty much impossible. So I think like one of my first experiences, probably as like a 15 or 16-year-old, was like after swim practice. Basically, you know, I was hanging out with buddies, and they had some, you know, south of the border swag, and that was it. Got to start somewhere.
Did you get high?
I got really high, and I had to go home. Classic.
Okay, I can go next. So I went to college in Milwaukee, and I was like a big athlete. So like Division I track and cross country. And so like all through college, I was very good and did not consume cannabis. But my senior year after track, some friends of mine, and it was literally seedy, brown, nasty, what I would consider now to be nasty, in a little baggie, you know. And oh my God, it just put me right to sleep. And I just was like so deeply asleep. It was the best sleep I ever got. Of course, now we know it's like, oh yeah, because that had all turned to CBN. I'm like, but I really got some good sleep. And that was like my first attraction to cannabis, was just like being like completely heavy and lethargic and sleepy.
I would love to see an illustrated trail of like how weed got back to us then, like all the things that it went through to get there and be like in the state that it was in. Of course, Walter, you and I were talking a little bit about that before we started recording.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the process of creating swag. Yeah, so growing up in LA, there was that, what do you call it, swag all around all the time. But for me, when it really meant something to me was when I injured my back. And I tried the pharmaceuticals and they didn't work. And I tried cannabis while I was a somewhat regular user already, you know, recreationally. And it really helped. And you know, it was obviously a better solution than the pharmaceuticals.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's an interesting thing. Like I used it for fun when I was younger, and I would hear people talking about medicinal use, and I used to joke. I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm smoking this for my glaucoma." He he.
Right.
But then it's like when you actually do like visit the medicinal applications, you're really blown away by it. And I think it's something that we have to have more conversations about now, because as we're getting into legalization, we're seeing that there's less and less conversations about that. And even like when I was in Alaska last month in the dispensaries they're not allowed to talk about that at all. And here in California, we have our cleaned up vocabulary about how we can make these discussions, because of course we don't want to be making false promises or claims, but the fact of the matter is it has been used medicinally for millennia, and there are things that it's really effective for, and we should be continuing those conversations. But well, that's a wormhole for another day.
Yeah, we could talk about that all week.
Exactly. But what made you decide to get into cultivation?
Well, that for me was we were traveling around and settled down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana for a little while. And I had already injured my back and needed the medicine, and I was pretty deeply aware at that point that it was very helpful, and I didn't like the pharmaceutical option. That wasn't really an option. And so we were settled down in Baton Rouge, and there was nothing. It was what the swag that was there was the worst I'd ever seen in my life. It felt like it had gone to the rest of the whole country, and this was the bottom of the bag. And there was no good flower available either. So I sat down and read the Grower's Guide cover to cover, and then went to the hardware store and bought some lights, and learned how to grow in a closet. And about 4 months later, we were able to enjoy our first harvest, and the magic of taking a seed, which seemed like an inanimate object, and then planting that seed, and a couple of months later harvesting it and sharing it with people that didn't have access either. And for me it was obviously super important for my back. So it was just that was it. That was changed my life right there.
Yeah, it's such an impactful thing. Riley, what made you start?
My wife Hannah White and I, we run Emerald Queen Farms out here in Willow Creek. We have had 19 years of love and life together, and the first part of our experience when we met, we lived in Olympia, Washington. And for me, once I was introduced to cannabis, I was pretty comfortable with it, and as I from my late teens to my early 20s, totally realized that was a passion and part of our life. And at that time we weren't cultivating specifically cannabis, but we were going to school at Evergreen for sustainable agriculture. And so our whole world was really steeped in market gardens and understanding farming systems and food systems, and just having that experience as a young college kid through Evergreen's agriculture program. So we got pretty fired up to grow vegetables, really was our whole shtick at the time, and we ran market gardens. 2 years into Hannah and I being together, we moved to California, and within that time frame, we still had the goal, we're moving the veggie farm to North Bay, and we're going to sell heirloom tomatoes to the Bay Area markets. And we were totally committed and stoked. We drove our farm truck down from Washington. We took as much of our farm equipment that we could, like hippie hoops and plastics and rolls of irrigation. It's we were geared up and ready to, grow food and medicine. That had always been our intent. And then kind of really understanding the place of the plant in California and us at the time, and us being youthful, it's California is really expensive. And so to own pieces of property in this state, you're not going to do it necessarily coming to it growing tomatoes. And so as far as to young entrepreneurial mindset, we're well, we should probably engage and cultivate, and so we started small for the head, and then we're able to scale and have different opportunities. And this is circa 2007.
That's when you were getting good money a pound too.
And it made sense because the scale met the intention.
Yeah.
And so you didn't have to have something that was, super labor intensive. You could really grow for yourself and have some extra but California is such a wild landscape and economy, you know, that you throw that into the mix, and then you're 10 years before legalization, and it was quite a time to be involved in cannabis cultivation in California.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when I started in 2012, and I believe that for a good pound in the dispensaries, they were paying about, I think it was around $3,000 a pound at that point in time. But, you know, that what people didn't understand later on when they were talking about the green rush, and the green rush was obviously over when these people were talking about it, was the great risk that you took and also cultivating too. But I remember reflecting at the time, because I come on my mother's side, I come from farmers, and thinking this is probably like the one of the few times in the history of farming, outside of when I think about like back in the day when they had the stuff with like tulips, the Dutch tulips, that farmers were actually getting, like, making really good money cultivating. Yeah. And now it's changed. It's changed considerably. And I think, you know, it's a really interesting thing to look at, like, you know, the different ways of cultivating. And, you know, I don't like to disparage cultivation one way or another, because of the fact that we're in this time of normalization and destigmatizing, and really, like, you know, and we need to all work together to create better policy. We have a lot of work to do, but on the other hand, there's nothing like the sun. And there is nothing like small craft cultivation, because for those of you who are listening, if you've never been at a farm and seen a grow and felt the energy that comes out of it, it's something that really, really must be experienced. And I know when I worked in a dispensary, we probably didn't get the best outdoor grown cannabis. And so not only was it less expensive because there wasn't the overhead of paying for PG&E, but then there was also the quality issue, which gave outdoor cannabis a bad rap. And actually, when I was at Huckleberry Hill Farms, Johnny said that they probably kind of worked against themselves, because the really beautiful outdoor that they sold, they used to sell as indoor, and so it would get indoor prices. So those of you out there who think that you were always smoking indoor cultivated cannabis, you're probably wrong, and it probably some of the best stuff that you had.
The stuff you like the best and makes you feel the best just might be sun grown.
Exactly. Exactly.
For decades.
But, you know, going into, like, the things with policy, there's been a lot of challenges. We have lost a lot of farms. We are contemplating a lot of changes even as we go in the industry, but there have also been some really creative ways to kind of lean into cannabis. Like, I am here at this beautiful farm where there is glamping, and there are gardens, and there's a future for cannabis tourism as well. How did you get into this, and what was the idea around opening the farm to visitors and really leading into cannabis tourism?
Well, Walter and I studied permaculture, you know, that is like it's a system of land management, basically, that, you know, is about how to, like, work with the earth instead of trying to impose your will upon it, and sort of like design a homestead that's in the most sort of efficient and harmonious way for, like, nature and the farmers and the people that live there. And so we always kind of were like, oh, we would love to have people come and, like, teach permaculture workshops, and I practice some healing arts, and it'd be so great to, like, have these retreats and do this thing, but, you know, we have this little patch up here, and, like, we can't really just, like, open the place up to strangers, because, you know, that was risky. And but basically, once Prop 64 passed and, you know, we had a license, it was like, actually, wait a minute, like, we can do both things now. And in fact, you know, though we hadn't really thought about it before, the cannabis is actually like an attractant to people to come here. So it kind of all just fell into place in the sense of, like, all the things that we love, we, you know, people also are interested in, and we can, like, show off this lifestyle that we are lucky enough to enjoy. And I think also some of the like negative press around our region and just people not really understanding kind of that a lot of what was happening here via cannabis economy was like tons of nonprofits, tons of artists. Like we have the most artists per capita in Humboldt County of like any county in California, I believe, you know? And so there was all of this community that happened because we could, you know, we were bonded due to having a common sort of enemy of law enforcement, certainly, you know, but that is a bond. And then also people were able to spend their money doing things that like built community, like the Mateel, you know, Reggae on the River, like all of these K-Mud, health centers, all of these things. Plus, like so many single moms were able to stay home with their kids. Like we all have like a wonderful culture of like potlucks and hanging out at the river and, you know, just these things that are so beautiful that really truly are at risk right now. But what I love is that like I get to share that with people and give them like a little real-time glimpse into like this is actually what this is all about. And like a lot of people are missing this and they don't even realize it. Like they miss community. They miss knowing their neighbors and like knowing that other people have their back. And like that's something that we have. And I think it's super special, plus nature and weed, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just all the things that we love and we're lucky enough to like be able to share them with people now, I think.
Yeah. Oh, it was the drive here was just beautiful, and coming down into your farm, it was just it's magical. It's so calm and peaceful. And for those of you listening, you know, cannabis tourism, there's something to this. You really need to, if you're in California or you're planning a visit, there are some beautiful places to come and stay and check out farms and the beauty of California and just everything that it has to offer. And you know, one thing to remember, too, is that you don't necessarily have to be somebody who consumes to enjoy all of this. There's a lot of beauty just with the fact that, you know, the agriculture in California is so special, and our landscape, and especially coming up to this beautiful place. And one thing I love about talking to all the farmers in Humboldt is just your community and how much you work together. And I feel like if we could all, the entire industry could work together the way that you all do, we could make some really great strides in policy and change and also destigmatization. And, you know, Riley, you do a lot of work with policy. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
You know, the current circumstance we are in as folks who engage in this culture is like we are working through normalization of cannabis. Yeah. And that is like a pretty big conversation and a burden on the folks who have to like keep pushing it. But you know, in terms of policy and in terms of like being an active farmer and a business owner and you know, trying to be a community member, like if you're not, in terms of policy, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Yeah.
And so it's really imperative to you know, in those tough times to really understand your position, you know. And so that is you know, what drives me currently to just, you know, do better and understand what we're working through. And there's a lot of other folks I could say could speak better to like the specific policies, but I just think it's important to be engaged and aware of the current landscape, because we're in this epic moment of normalization, and it's really up to us and how we want to preserve the story and culture. And really what's up is the potential loss of culture that's currently happening, you know. And as Judi mentioned, like we're so lucky to have had this moment and have, you know, like I said, we feel really blessed to be here and have the journey to this point, and to be, you know, we can't quit. Like we got to keep going, you know. And you got to figure that out. So.
Elevate your brand with iSpire, the global leader in vape technology with over 1,000 patents worldwide. Our innovative iSpire 1 simplifies your process with self-sealing hardware and automated filling. No capping, no hassle. For brands ready to go to market, our iSpire signature devices are for premium, customizable solutions. And as proud members of NCAA, NORML, the Origins Council, and the Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, iSpire is committed to advocacy and social justice. Learn more today at getispire.com.
Well, and for our listeners who are in other places, because I think that, a lot of people don't understand. I know, like, when the other year I had David Crosby on the podcast before he passed, and I was telling him about, and he's been up here, I know, but I was telling him about some of the hardships of the farmers and people losing their family farms that they've had for generations. And his response was, "That's fucked up." And I was like, yeah, Cros, it is. But, we need to have more conversations so that the public understands what's going on, so that they can vote with their wallets and be aware when they go to their dispensaries that they ask for products by small farmers. So how do we start creating more outreach? Doing what Judi and Walter are doing is a huge part of that, normalizing it and making it a destination for people to enjoy. But also, the fact that you're even being on this podcast with me to talk about it is a huge thing. And for those out there who are consumers, what can they do to help further the conversation, do you think?
One thing that people can do, like you said, is definitely, if you are the sort of person who looks for fair trade coffee, or you want organic food, or you go out of your way to buy something that was made by an artisan, you should be thinking the same things about your weed.
Yeah.
And ultimately, all of us up here who have been honing our craft for decades, and some people generations, we cannot play that commodity game. And because everybody just thought that was the game, for the past 6 years, it was sort of presented as, well, this is your only option. This is the game. And we cannot play against those giant funded companies. It is not the same game. And in my opinion, we are finally getting to a point, access is a problem, right? Access to retail, then also getting those retailers to give access to products from small farms, from craft farms, from environmentally friendly farms, from healthy farms, all of these things that are super important. Sometimes even if you have a dispensary in your town, they don't have any of these products. In my experience, 80% of dispensaries in California do not have a single craft product on their menu.
That's a shame.
That's
a loss.
Crazy, but it is the current reality. And so what I really believe is that we have to access the people that care about these things. Because not everybody does care about it. Some people are 100% satisfied drinking Bud Light, right? Or, eating Doritos. And then other people are like, no, I only, drink, my special micro brew from down the street. And, I only eat handmade, hand-milled corn tortillas from special blue corn grown in, Mexico, whatever, right? And so it's we really have to establish that this is also a thing with cannabis.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just, because they had their guy, or maybe they just go buy gummies, and whatever, and that's all great. And it's great that we even can talk about it,
Yeah.
But it is a different game, right? It's we're over here playing some cooperative game that is for the good of the plant. It's good of the earth. It's for the good of the people in our community, also the people who are consuming our products in the end. It really is better for you. And it really makes you feel better. There is a real difference. And, I want to play our game. And that other game, it can be happening.
Totally.
I don't want to play, and like maybe sometimes we trade players between the games, right? And maybe people start out like playing that big game, and then they like become a little more nuanced and a little more educated, and they filter over to our game. And I just want to like focus on our game and make sure that the people who want to play our game like know that it even exists, you know?
That's it, turning people onto it, because I think if, you know, yeah, you have to have the different levels for the accessibility. But when somebody tries a really beautiful craft-grown flower, I don't think there's any turning back from that. You know, I mean, I know there wasn't for me. Like, we're talking about, smoking swag when we were younger for our first experience. I know that's what I grew up with. The rolling tray wasn't for rolling; it was for cleaning all that.
Clean all the seeds out, right?
Yeah, seeds and stems.
Frisbee in the car, exactly.
Yeah, that's it. Well, there's been a lot of talk about direct-to-consumer policy. What do you think about that? What do you think's going to happen? And I know it's kind of a crystal ball sort of thing, but what are your thoughts on that? Because I think it'd be really helpful in my opinion, but I'm also not the grower.
Right. And I'll speak to, Judi and Walter have a really diverse understanding of market. So maybe you can speak to the value of that. As far as the policy, it's a moving target.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think like right now we're sitting here and like AB 1111 is sitting on Gavin Newsom's desk, which would enable farmers to sell at a licensed event at their own booth without a retail license. And that is a step in the right direction.
One less flaming hoop to jump through.
But not to be clear, it is not direct to consumer. It is still 3 steps to the consumer, right? Because, we have to essentially, surrender our harvest to our distributor and then technically are not allowed to touch it again ever, unless we went to a store and bought it ourselves. And so just managing that situation is very disconnecting from the person who ends up with it at the end. Luckily, there's the internet. We've learned to like put a lot of QR codes and stuff on our packaging so that if people you want to communicate with us, they at least can find us, and that's been great. Honestly, I probably get 1 or 2 people every day signing up for my email list. And the only explanation I have for that is that it is from my packaging, because otherwise, like, I'm not necessarily doing anything on an everyday kind of a basis. And that shows me that people do want what I have. And when they find it at a store, they have a good experience. And that, knowing that, it's not easy to even find that out. And that's the crazy part is like in many other businesses, you produce a product, the person buys it from you, especially a craft product, like they go buy it from you, maybe in person at a farmer's market or something. And then you see them the next weekend. Yeah. And they're like, oh my God, that was so good. Like, I want to get more of that. Or, ooh, what else do you have? I want to try this. And like, we right now are unable to have that experience. So we also don't get that feedback. We don't know what people want. So actual direct to consumer, one could currently do now if they had a micro business license. Mm-hmm. Many counties, this is like extremely a challenging license to get. For instance, in Trinity County right now, they are not even available for me to apply for. And so when you think about the name of that, a micro business, the original intent with that in Prop 64 was for people like us to be able to go direct to consumer, because whoever was writing that, I think, had some idea that they were like, yeah, for these little guys, like, this whole thing is not going to work,
Yeah.
But somehow, before we actually ended up with regulations, they removed having to cultivate. Before, you had to cultivate, and you could only cultivate 10,000 square feet of cannabis, right? And somehow they removed the cultivation and be like, oh, well, you just have to have 3 of the 4 activities. You don't have to cultivate. You could just distribute, manufacture, and sell, right? Well, you know who has all the micro businesses in California? Big businesses, which is very frustrating.
Yeah.
And just like, come on, you know? And so if we had those and people in counties where you can get them relatively easy, like you actually could take an order, you know, put it through the system, even though it's all paperwork, be like, now I'm transferring it to my distribution. Okay, now I'm doing more paperwork and I'm transferring it to my retail. Okay, great. Now someone's bought it. Now I'm doing more paperwork and I'm delivering it to them. And like, you could do all of those things. Most of us cannot get those licenses. So right now, for instance, there are some ways you can do it within the rules that currently exist. You can find like delivery partners who are willing to basically just deliver on your behalf, you know. You, of course, are having to pay them and they need to get something out of it. You still have to use a distributor. So again, there's still 3 people between me, but at least I'm actually like taking the order from the person. Right.
You have more control.
Yeah. And so that's a thing that I think a lot of us are trying to navigate right now. And it's like there is a lot of logistics.
Yeah.
Plus finding those delivery partners who want to work with you and deal with your thing are like not easy either, you know? So I'm working on it because I'm 100% convinced that if I could do that and make that happen, that's what I want to do. I want to stay home on the farm running an e-commerce business. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
You know? And why shouldn't I? Like, we have amazing cannabis, right? Yeah. Me and all my neighbors and friends, and like, you literally cannot get what we have in most parts of California. And that's just really unfortunate.
It is, because people are missing out. And I really believe that the distribution model, I mean, we all know that was a political thing. And we all know that it hasn't really worked well for the industry because we've seen some distributors in receivership where people have not gotten their product back or gotten paid for money owed. And that has been very impactful on businesses, especially small businesses.
I would estimate there's more than $1 billion owed to small farmers in the Emerald Triangle. 100%.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't understand the industry, if you're in cannabis, you cannot file for bankruptcy, and farmers do not get helped by the government. So, digest that.
Kind of the opposite of helped by the government.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And you know, but do you think that, I know that the direct consumer things that are being proposed, they are not what you want them to be. What are you going to say, Riley?
I'll speak to that. Like, currently, we have to operate within a broken system.
Yeah.
There is a distribution model that was voted in by the voters. If we want to think big, we have to get the legislator to put a bill forward that allows us to amend and adopt frameworks within the current legislation. So it's really complicated because we're stuck in a box and there's no way out. There is one way out, actually, and it's through consolidation. And the farmers who are here and represent the culture and the craft have to make some pretty drastic changes in their business and in their lifestyle in order to move through that process. So, you know, for me, I believe exactly what Judi believes, that like if our businesses were allowed to operate in the way that most agriculture, even hemp, is allowed to operate, it would give us the ability to access consumers. We have to keep in mind that we're working within a distribution system, that the product has to go through distribution. So however that works and whatever that language is, that's what we're working with. For the policy, as far as AB 1111, it is not perfect. It's not even what was necessarily baked on the front end, but what it does is it pushes against the ceiling. And so when you have an opportunity to look at policy that's actually on the governor's desk, and you have 2 choices, to support it or not, you should support it, because if it is truly a benefit to a very small section of farmers which could run farmers market through AB 1111. Even though that doesn't directly support my business model, it supports our cause, and it weakens the structure of the DCC and the legislators. So, and then to put into kind of another framework too, to get policy pushed through and to get it into action could be 7 years.
Yeah.
And the real question is, what does it look like in the next 7 years? And there's way bigger market and economic indicators that we all need to figure out together to be able to survive that period of time. Doesn't mean we don't need to keep pushing new policy, but it's important to, like, you know, understand that if the pricing of wholesale completely collapses and the price of flower is driven down, you know, that in itself is probably the biggest danger that we're all facing, because to pump pricing back up in economics is pretty, you know, it's not in our advantage. What is in our advantage, what we have, is a different product, and we have a limited supply of that product, and we have a culture and a story directly associated with that product. So I think the DTC is incredibly important, and I think you have to, you know, be present with the process and understand, like, what boundaries we have and understand where to push.
Yeah.
And, you know, and no matter what happens with AB 1111, we'll still be pushing for direct to consumer how we want it, and really to break the mold of the distribution model and to have the legislators be able to amend is really the next move. And really to really have the conversation of normalization where cannabis is agriculture.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that's it, plain and simple, because, and that's why we're having some of the conversations that we're having now around testing and pesticides and all that, is because it's agriculture, you know. But I think, like, people get really, and I understand why, you know, people get impatient, they get frightened. I love hearing the rooster, by the way.
What's his name?
Teenage rooster trying to learn how to get it right.
But it is, you know, I know people see a lot of policies that will be changing somewhere towards the better, but it isn't exactly what they want. But we do have to take those baby steps, because it is, we're not, especially because we are dealing with, I think a lot of the things we're dealing with in some ways are syntaxes due to, you know, the stigma. And so as we change, as it does create that normalization, we will have more conversations. But I also know that the next 7 years are going to be really tight for people, and that's going to be really stressful. When we look at policy, actually, I want to go back to something that Judi said. You were talking about the challenges of being a farmer and being right on the Humboldt-Trinity border. Sorry for saying Humboldt in the beginning. It's been a long day of driving. But you were saying how different it is going from one county to another, and it's got to be frustrating. But what are some of the challenges that farmers are dealing with that?
Oh, the licensing in Trinity has certainly been interesting, as it has been in all of Emerald Triangle. We've all had our ups and downs at different times. There was a period where the whole licensing kind of fell apart, and they didn't have anybody staffing the office, and they didn't have...
and so there are 13,000 people in Trinity County. There is not a lot of people paying taxes into Trinity County coffers, and we don't really have a lot of county services. So to suddenly give this little tiny county that, like, literally probably never had to do, you know, it's just the basics for real, and all of a sudden you're like, now you have to implement an entirely new industry and set of regulations, and you have to do it in like a 6-month period of time, and you have to wrangle all these people who have not filled out some sort of official paperwork probably in decades, and
Forever.
like so it's like, I have compassion for like how challenging that is, but from the side of the person just like trying to like run a business, like, wow, you cannot really imagine.
It was messy. It was just really messy. They didn't, you know, they got sued, and there was just weird stuff going on with some of the supervisors, and yeah, it was a shit show, and there really is no other way to put it. But like our renewal application 2 years ago was over 400. I think it was maybe 500 pages long. It was a lot of work, and at that point, well, at any point, we didn't have an extra $25,000 to hire somebody to do that license, and that just the paperwork on the license that's what they were worth. That's what they were going for, and like we're that's a lot for some of us out here in the hills. We didn't have that sort of money to spend on that, so we did it ourselves, and trying to disentangle the legal language. And I'm a fingers in the dirt sort of guy. I speak a very different language than what they do, and really felt like pounding my head against the wall for a long time. But we got through it, and currently we actually, some of the people that lost their licenses in Trinity County and couldn't keep going forward with all the ridiculousness of it, and all the other issues of overtaxation, and the license fees are so expensive, and all these other things. But so we currently have our cannabis division is staffed by former license holders. And so we really...
It's getting better.
It's gotten so much better in so many ways. Like, they call me back. They're real people. Like, the whole thing is a lot different than it was. And so that's, Trinity County is working towards resolving some of it, for sure.
But I think, like, local control in general, like, I understand why they did it, but it's crazy.
Right. Well,
to have the rules be different in every county, and then even different cities within the same county have different rules. Like, that's nuts.
Right. It left a situation where we could literally, if it all lined up just wrong, the cultivator could be taxed by their city they were living in, then the county that they're living in, and then you could send it to a distributor in a county that's getting taxed. And then that could go to a retailer in a county and a city that are getting taxed.
And people wonder why weed is expensive in a dispensary.
It's not because of our wholesale prices. That's not why weed is expensive. It's got nothing to do with that. It's on average, 1/3 of that final price tag is taxes.
Yeah, and consumers don't understand that.
Right,
yeah.
and then that's, all those taxes, that doesn't include let's give the state $10,000 for this license, and the county another $6,000 for a license, and the state water board wants a couple grand, and like every year, like it doesn't, and so like those are taxes or whatever you want to call it, and all this is only happening to the legal side of the market.
Right.
So,
and then on top of that, a lot of the taxes that are paid into that by producers, some of those taxes are going into grants for nonprofits that actively work against the cannabis community.
Or paying our sheriffs. And then here's the thing is, so when some other country does something bad, we put a tariff on their product, and it's to discourage that product from being sold.
Right.
So we have a tariff on the legal side. To me, that is absolute nonsense. Why are you putting a tariff on the legal side and letting the black market run free? Like, I mean, not like I come from the traditional or whatever you want to call it market, right? I'm not throwing shade, but it's ridiculous that. So we pay all these taxes, pay all these fees, pay all these licenses, get a full California Environmental Quality Act 400-page application in there, and then we get penalized on our product gets penalized extra on top of the sales taxes and all those other taxes, and they're all cumulative.
Yeah.
And they just keep adding up onto the price, and it's just to me, that's one of the biggest nonsense issues in the whole thing. It's just they're killing us.
Well, that's it. It's kind of like with all of this, it's like don't hate the player, hate the game. It's like the people who are working in the traditional market, it's because they don't want to deal with all of this. but then the state wonders why they're not getting the taxes that they thought that they should be. And the fact of the matter is when we're looking at policy, I don't know. The more I work in policy, the more I realize that there's no common sense that's involved in any of this, really. Because if you looked at it through a business perspective, if the barrier to entry was lower and the taxes were lower, we would be selling way more product to the public, and the state would be getting more in taxes, and everyone would be winning.
Absolutely. I mean, how many people are still buying on the traditional market because it's 1/3 or 1/2 the price, because it's not being, it's not paying all these prices. And, that's just, it's just, they don't seem to understand the basic math and how these things work. You're discouraging the legal market, and that's the net result is less product being sold through the legal market, and that's less tax they're collecting.
Right. And then also when you look at, like, some people go to the traditional market because they're tired of seeing the same old on the menus. Everything, all these, there's a lot of gelato crosses going on, right? But if they were actually looking at, like you were mentioning before, small farmer cannabis is not seen in a lot of dispensaries, and that's actually where some of the most interesting cultivars come from. So if we had more of those in the dispensaries, that would also be capturing the imagination of the consumer, and people would be coming for that too. And that's not knocking gelato for those of you out there who like it. It's a very fine cultivar.
But I do
There's
think
just too much of it.
Part of the, it's like it really does a disservice, I think, to like people who maybe are like, oh, I've been hearing that this is good for sleep, or this is good for anxiety, or whatever. Like, oh, I haven't ever tried it before, or maybe in college and I had a bad experience or whatever. But like those people, this is like my biggest disappointment about the way like dispensary menus have kind of gone, is that these people, like, they're this new opportunity, right? Like both for them and also for us as the people providing the products. And if you go in and your experience is kind of meh or bad, let's hope not. But like, even if it's just kind of like, oh, whatever, like it's not going to draw you in that way, So we actually like lose a potential long-term customer because, unfortunately, like the consolidated chain dispensaries, like they're just like, this is easiest for us to sell. Plus, we have interests in all of these big brands. So why wouldn't I sell them? Because I own part of it, and it's sort of like, there's also sort of the like Starbucks mentality where like it's the same everywhere. You can go anywhere and you can get the same thing. And some people are super into that,
I'm glad I'm not that person.
It's like, but there are, and that's okay. But like, I think people don't actually understand how limited, like that their choices are being limited at the kind of retail level. Not all, like in every major metropolitan area, there are a few dispensaries that go out of their way, right? But like compared to the whole, and compared to probably the one that's around the corner from most people's houses,
that's like just going to the corner store to bring something to drink for a dinner party, and it's just Ernest and Julio Gallo. But Riley, we haven't talked about your farm at all, and we need to. So tell us about your farm. You've been so patient.
Oh yeah, I am very grateful to have the opportunity to cultivate and to be in that space. It's like you think of yourself 15 years ago, and to kind of be here now the novelty has not faded for me. Like I love what I do, I love where I do it, and I love how we do it. Whether we're growing food, we're growing animals, or cannabis or flowers, like it all kind of fills the same well. Yeah. So we're really blessed up with our piece of land to have the opportunity of a lot of arable space. The soil's really nice. the exposure is really good. Hannah and I have worked diligently to build infrastructure that supports our systems, and so as far as a cultivator, I think this is year 7 with that site. There's systems that are coming into play that are like making my daily experience more consistent and enjoyable. And it's, this was a year in particular for our farm where, Judi and Walter and I, we live in a region that's really fire bound. And we've had so many in the recent years with the California drought, these hills have changed. And we've had so many close fires that it really has complicated, a farmer growing an annual crop. Like we get one rip at this, and so fire impacts in Willow Creek area and eastern Humboldt and in the Klamath Mountains have been pretty considerable. This season was a really great season to celebrate because, we did have fire hit the landscape really close to our farm, but the prevailing winds were in the right direction, and the firefighters in CAL FIRE were able to jump on it and really make the best of it. So I kind of look back at this season, right now, for the listeners, we're getting close to harvest. Like, your dreams of your plantings are now coming to fruition, and so I look back at this season, I'm really grateful because, the farm's in a good place. The soil is locked in. We're all native soil on like basically 3/4 of the site. And then the remainder was potting soil mixed with native because it was the space that we had used it at the time. So we have a really unique cultivation area, and the flower and the resin that's produced through that is next level. And we're proud to say that like we grow some really high grade resin. And so kind of just looking back at where we're at this year, like the systems are in place, the soil's locked in, Mother Nature gave us a pass with fire. The crop looks great, and feeling pretty stoked overall.
Well, and with the cultivars that all of you grow, like the microclimates make such a difference in what you choose. What are the differences between the climates in your farms?
Well, our farms are at different elevation and we're on the opposite sides of the river. So one's a kind of western exposure and the other's eastern exposure. So, and we're at a lower elevation. We're about 300 feet above the river and about 700 feet above sea level on our place. And we're kind of sloping to the west. So our spot's a hot spot. Gets to be like 2 o'clock in the afternoon and we're perpendicular to the sun and there's just no turning it off. But we're in a neat little microclimate because we're above the fog and a lot of the times below the clouds, and so it works out really well for us. Riley's spot is,
we're about 1,500 feet above them in elevation, so it offers a different evening diurnal swings of the temperatures from the proximities of the river. I can tell like in the morning right now the dew point is rising, it's getting wetter out there, the grass is growing more rapidly near the beds, and there's all these just different indicators that make your morning walk like pretty special. I feel really grateful because I farmed a ton of different sites prior to this, and so I have an understanding of mountain farming, up deep dirt roads. Hannah and I have been cultivating cannabis in the Emerald Triangle in every single county at some point between now and 2008. Depends if you consider Sonoma part of the Emerald Triangle, which we'll just admit that they're just good buddies and maybe cousins. But we spent some time in Sonoma, and shout out to my farmers down there. But we spent time in Sonoma, Lake County, Mendocino.
Yeah.
We had property in Trinity, and we settled in Humboldt. So having that experience with so many different regions, the time frame of that was a pretty wild time for cannabis, for the plant, for the people. And so I really love my site, and I'm really happy to be there, and it's good to cultivate on a flat piece of ground. For those of you listening,
we've been having a lot of conversations with farmers about appellations and terroir, but the microclimates make such an extreme difference. And it also really kind of helps inform you what cultivars you want to work with, correct?
I mean, I don't necessarily go into a whole bunch of cultivars being like, oh yeah, this one's going to work great on my site. We're more willing to try things because most things can work good out here. We're in a good region for growing. I don't know what the percentage of the cultivars are out there, but most of them work pretty well. But so it's kind of about trying them out and then locking into those ones that you're like, you know what, this one and this one, we get along just great, and we should hang out. And so for us, that's kind of been the journey, is just finding those cultivars that really like our spot. So some of them don't like that heat that we experience, that's for sure. But I don't know, I've seen OG just reaching for the sun on a 114 degree day. I don't know, most of them seem to not mind the heat, as long as I feel like we have we're blessing of cool nights, and so the soil never gets, it's not like the desert or something like that where everything's just roasting and then it's roasting all night. It cools down every night. Our relative humidity comes up, and so the plants get to drink back in, and the soil gets to sponge back out and moisture even out. And so I think that's really part of why they can really tolerate a hot day. But Headband loves it here, the Sour Diesel loves it here, so we go with things that work.
Well, I'm looking forward to smoking some of that joint you rolled for me right before we start recording. I did a dry hit on it beforehand, and it's really fragrant and delicious.
What'd you get?
That was the fluorite.
Oh, yeah. That's a fun one. Yeah, I think one funny thing, we have a little cannabis alliance in Willow Creek, and we tried for a while. Like, one of the reasons we formed that group was some people were very interested in trying to actually, legally form an appellation of origin. And, I mean, I think that's still on the table. I think we all just sort of realize, what a long game that is. But, we would talk about it, and actually the majority of us in the group at the time are in the same watershed, the South Fork Trinity watershed, that Riley and I are both in, and a bunch of the other folks were. And we sat there reading the rules and being like, okay, you're supposed to share these different, climate, culture, that one I think we do. But then one of them was having these cultivars that did well in a region. And I was like, oh yeah, good luck trying to get all these different farmers to all agree on what cultivars we're all going to grow in Willow Creek. That is the end of no, that's never going to happen, because everybody has their thing. Right. That would have been the breaking point for sure. So hopefully, one of these days we'll figure that stuff out. But
I'll throw my hat in on the appellations conversation, because currently the Mattole, in Southern Humboldt have been working on their application as far as state appellations, and they have made a considerable amount of progress in the sense that they're organized. The policy and the details of the appellation process are stout and complicated, but in the end, the creation of appellations, what it provides for the future generation, and the promise of that, and the fact that the state is willing to be, to promote it, is an opportunity. And so when, as you were saying, we've had a lot of conversations with appellations, and I think in the Willow Creek community in the Upper Trinity area, there is an opportunity for native soil farmers to file a petition. Currently, there's no cannabis appellations in the world.
Yeah.
So even in a marketing sense, it's pretty interesting to where that needle will lie. So the Mattole have been working on it with their group, and Hannah and I had the opportunity for the last 2 seasons to do a project with those farmers. And what we did is we took 6 cultivars between all the farmers, and we shared them and we grew them. And we took notes and we studied the plant. It was actually a considerable amount of work as far as data collection through the process for all of us who grow an annual plant. But it was really interesting because we were able to see the same varietals grown in different practices, soil, exposure, and it was actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so to do that project, and we in Willow Creek, like I wanted to understand through their process, so we got to be a sister farm through that project. And yeah, I look forward to seeing the data. We all tracked our soil temperatures, we tracked our sun exposure days. Like there's just so much data in the moment of what we do as farmers that I think has a lot of value to understanding our process. Like we just know it intuitively. Like there's like a daily check-in you do on your farm, and by the time you're done with that, maybe your cup of coffee's gone and you got a real firm understanding of what the priority is and how to pivot. There's a lot of data that's associated with that too. So working with those farmers and doing these plant projects was really cool. And there's also an aspect of Appalachians that just, it's not just about the plant, but it's also about the connection of the communities. And so through that project, I was able to get to know other farmers, hear other farmers' stories, become more part of their community and also part of ours. And so there's that cultural aspect that is really important to keep building upon. You can't lose sight. Yeah, we're here for, today, but, tomorrow includes like really encapsulating our culture and making sure it has a place to be. So
yeah, preserving that is so very important. And when we're looking at the future of cannabis and possibly having interstate commerce, I mean, come on, we're California.
Yep.
And
just gotta hold on.
Just gotta hold on. So as we start to kind of wrap up our session here, what are some things that you're excited and hopeful about in the future? Or, I'm gonna add to that. And what is a parting thought that you'd like to leave to our listeners?
I'll take the mic on this. Currently, what I'm excited about is, we have this evolution of community, and I love participating in it. And so that drives me personally to, have more connectivity. I get to cultivate community and cannabis in the same conversation. So, the day to day, I love where I work, like I said, and the opportunity to continually do that is exciting. There's lots of hurdles getting to market. There's lots of hurdles in the logistics of, land use policy, and trying to conform an industry that was like never intended. But I'm happy to be here and happy to do the work.
I bet you got into a lot of subject areas you never thought you'd be interested in.
Absolutely. You're getting a master's degree in this process before it's over. Actually, the master's program teachers are asking us to come.
It's like, I'm pretty sure we have like multiple PhDs at this point,
yeah.
right?
They're asking us to come to Cal Poly and help them with their programming. So, which is another conversation for another time.
I mean, for me, the one of the highlights of legalization for sure has just been open communication amongst farmers and, expanding. Like, I didn't know any farmers down in southern Humboldt I knew a couple, but, it's opened it up. It's opened up the conversations, and especially, like, just because I like learning and doing better every year. I always try and find something we can do a little better. And, we've learned so much over the last, 6 or 8 years or whatever it's been of legalization now that we're playing with. And, just really like the open communication, learning from other farmers, having regenerative farming conferences and these things where we can really just share knowledge and be like, well, you know what? I dry my weed like this. And, that makes a difference. Like we're all leveling up, we're all, and everyone's benefiting from it. And, that's one of the things that keeps me going and keeps me enjoying it and participating in the community, where before I kind of was just a hermit in the hills. Didn't really come out and participate. And, now I'm on the board at the Fire Safe Council and doing stuff like that we really couldn't do, you know, just because we were essentially shunned by the old establishment and stuff. And so now it's like, well, now it's legal now, so you know, we're here. And so there's neat things like that.
Okay. Yeah, I think for me, like the things that I am looking forward to, and they come out of both of these things, right? Being able to talk openly about it, having, you know, folks who had a misperception about this plant previously, like sort of just letting them gently discover for themselves, like, wow, this actually makes me feel so much better. I'm happier. I can now go out and like live my life in a better way. It's like, I mean, I 100% truly believe that, you know, cannabis can help people to like live a better life. And as each of us is doing that, like the cumulative impact on the planet is humongous, you know? Yeah. And so like on that, like kind of like macro level for me, like it's just every single day trying to allow like one new person to have like an amazing experience, right? Whether that's, you know, buying an eighth at, you know, one of the dispensaries that thankfully does sell our weed, you know, to consumers, and like just like feeling more connected, feeling healthier, feeling like more themselves, like more creative, all the things that people enjoy, you know. And that like I really do think that like when they do that, or when they come to visit and like really have a whole experience of like reconnecting with nature, reconnecting with themselves when they're like disconnected from the internet, which is a huge thing all in and of itself. But, you know,
Truth.
Feeling connected to the earth, which many of the problems with our society, I believe, are like, you know, nature deficit disorder, right? So like all of those things together, it's like that is what gives me hope for the world, is I'm like just one person at a time, feeling better, doing better. And overall, like it all gets better, and hopefully it just happens soon enough that we can, you know, that we haven't irreparably, you know, whatted everything up. So
I love that. I usually don't add my hope, but what I'm excited about. But I'm excited. Well, one thing that's made me so happy is just coming to visit you all and realizing that our community is stronger than ever, and it's building more than ever before, and we need each other. But also that more consumers will get active and start voting with their wallets, and also letting their policymakers know that depend on their votes for their jobs, that they contribute to society, they pay taxes, they use cannabis, and they vote, and their views of a cannabis consumer are outdated, and that we do matter. But also that more people that are in the cannabis community, that are in the cannabis industry, are getting involved in government, in policy. Because if we don't get involved, if we don't say things, nothing will change. So I'm just so happy to be here with you three today. And for people who want to follow you on social media and get in contact, how do they do that?
So Walter manages our Soul Spirit Farm Instagram and Facebook, and that's SOL like the sun, and it's only one farm.
Oh, I don't answer the Facebook though.
Oh no, just Instagram.
Just one.
Instagram, and then I am Soul Spirit Retreats. So that's more for our like glamping and tourism side of things,
which you really need to check out. Get up to Trinity and check it out.
I'll second that. Fantastic property. Fantastic folks. To find more information about Hannah and I, our farm is Emerald Queen Farms with an S, and we are on Instagram. And yeah, we're here. Come visit.
Thank you so much. And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please Give us a review, share it with a friend, let us know what your favorite episodes are, and if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Payan on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher. Tune in. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.